This build turned out so good. Thanks, dude. It really did. Give me a little walkthrough of it. So this is my Lian Li O11 Vision build. And for those that might not know, this is actually my main PC right here, which I use for gaming and video editing, and pretty much everything is done on this system. But I'm gonna be building a second setup pretty soon. So I built this PC, which is mainly gonna be used for productivity. So it's got a GIGABYTE Z890 motherboard. It's got an Intel 285K CPU. We've got 64 gigabytes of TEAMGROUP T-Create RAM. We've got a WD Black 4 terabyte NVMe. Got a GIGABYTE 4080 Super graphics card. We've got Lian Li TL wireless fans all around. We've got an 8.8 inch screen up here, which matches my wallpaper and also my desk mat, which is really cool, but overall a really clean build. Then if we look in the back, we've got a Lian Li Edge 1000 watt power supply, and then we've got the DanCam signature cable management, which ended up turning out so clean. Man, how do you do your cable management like that? There's really three things when it comes to good cable management. So the first one is gonna be patience. You've gotta be willing to spend a little extra time to dial in your cable management, because on a fresh build like this, I'll spend anywhere from 2 to 8 hours getting the cable management to look how I want it to look. So just make sure you set aside that extra time needed, because it's gonna take that extra time to get it right. So the second one is gonna be part selection. So part selection and research are absolutely huge. So you've got to know how each component works and how they all tie in together. Because let's take fans, for example. So a fan may have 2 cables needed to power it. And let's say you're running 10 fans total. So that means you're gonna have to manage 20 different cables. But there's also some fans out there that have 1 cable per fan group. So you've really got to work within your budget, and you've got to know how each component works. And you've also got to choose a case that allows for the cable management that you want to achieve. So just do your research, know what you're getting into, and then work within your budget. And then if you are on the budget side, there are tools like zip ties and cable wraps that you can always utilize to get it to look good. So the last one is going to be visualizing where each cable is going to go. So if you know the path that each cable is going to go, it's going to be that much easier to make it look cleaner. And then also being able to hide cables. So cable management, it's all about hiding things. So there's a lot of things that you can hide in drive caddies or just behind components that will really come into play when you're doing your cable management. We're going to need a little bit more than that, man. We need some kind of tutorial. Let's take it back to the build process. So all of the components are installed in the case, but as you can tell, all of the cables have been separated. And it's a good idea, like I was saying earlier, to know exactly where each cable is gonna go. So let's identify some of these cables. So we've got all of my power supply cables. We've got SATA, GPU, we've got 2 CPU cables, my motherboard cable. These are our fan cables. We've got our fan controller. This 3-split cable is actually for the fans. It plugs directly into the power supply. This goes from the PSU to the motherboard. We've got the screen that's going to go up top with the USB-A and HDMI cable. And then we've got some cable wraps, which technically aren't a part of it, but they are going to help make it look really clean. And you can see I've got the AIO cables loose as well. We'll get those nice and managed. And then if we look at the back, all of my front panel connector cables are loose as well. We're gonna make those look clean. So let's put these back in, and then I am going to start with these AIO cables and getting these as managed as possible. Okay, so I've got the 5-volt RGB connection and the 3-pin connection already hooked up. And the way I did it was the 5-volt RGB connection, the cable is actually being routed behind this heatsink, and then it comes through here. Then all the cables are actually behind this heatsink right here. And then they come down and plug into a 5-volt RGB header down there. Then the 3-pin connection is plugged into my CPU fan header up here. And then I've got it routed right here to the left of this DIMM slot. Then all the extra cables are actually tucked in under here. So we've got a nice clean look, and I didn't have to route any of those cables towards the back and then back towards the front, because that's how most people normally do it, but ended up turning out super clean. So let's go ahead and turn to the back of the PC now. So now we're gonna move on to the front panel connector cables. And as you can see, I have entirely too much length, and I could just kind of tuck them down here, but I really don't wanna see any of that excess cable. So what we're gonna do is, you'll notice that all of those cables actually route underneath the PC. They actually go under here, and then all of our buttons are on this side. So any of the excess cabling we have, we're gonna tie underneath the PC. So let's go ahead and get that started right now. So all of the excess for the front panel connector cables has been tied underneath the PC, and it doesn't really look that clean, but it doesn't really matter because no one's ever gonna see this. And if we place the PC back upright, the cables are completely hidden out of the way. We didn't have to have any excess cabling down here, and then we can actually push these over more. So if you even look from this side, you can barely see them. So that came out even better than I thought it was going to be. So let's go ahead and move on to some of the power supply cables now. So here's where we're at right now. We've got the motherboard 24-pin cable going up through these Velcro strips and then out to this grommet and then to the motherboard. We've got our GPU cable kind of looped up right here, kind of tucked with the motherboard 24-pin, and it's going under towards the front of the PC, and that's obviously going to go towards the graphics card. And then we've got our CPU cables going behind this drive caddy. So this is what I'm talking about with hiding cables. So I was able to sneak these behind this drive caddy, and you can see they pop out right there, but I was able to cleanly hide them. So we got them plugged in to the PSU, and they immediately go up behind this caddy and then over towards the CPU connections on the motherboard. And then we've got our SATA power. The cable is right here. It's plugged in and it's kind of hidden behind the CPU cables right here, and it goes up, and then it's actually tucked in this drive caddy right now, and you can kind of see it. And then all of our fan cables are going to be tucked in there as well. And you can see this is all of our fan cables. So we've got this 3-split cable. So each one of these cables powers a group of fans, and these 3 are all going to plug into this cable. And then I'm going to do my best to jam them all in this rear drive caddy. so they will not be seen, especially once the front drive caddy is installed. So we just want to hide these as well as we can. So let's go ahead and get into the fan cables. So all of the fan cables are now plugged in. So the side fans and the bottom fans are being routed through the bottom right here. They're kind of all grouped together with all of those cables. So they're coming up, they're going behind the motherboard 24 pin cable, nice and hidden. And you can kind of see those two back there. Then they're going into the drive caddy and they're being plugged into that three-way Y-split cable that's going into our SATA power plug. And then the rear fans, they're being grouped with the CPU cables being routed behind the caddy and then going into the caddy. So it ended up turning out really clean. And then the side and the rear fans do have a USB 2.0 connection. And I've also got those going behind right here and they're being plugged into the power supply. And then I've got this one, which is the motherboard signal. So this power supply is really cool. And it's got USB 2.0 plugs on it. So it looks really clean, but now we just need to use those cable wraps to tighten them up. So let's go ahead and do that. So the last thing we need to do is install this 8.8-inch screen above the motherboard tray. And you can see we've got our CPU cables with a considerable amount of slack and pushed over to the left. And that's to prevent them from blocking any parts of the screen, because this is probably our normal viewing angle from sitting at our desk. So none of the screen should be blocked by our CPU cables. And I know what you're thinking. You're looking at this tape and going, why are you going to tape this monitor in place? And it's because this double-sided tape is extremely strong. I can probably come back 5 years from now and try to remove this monitor, and it's going to be extremely difficult to do. I've used this a number of times before, and it works fantastic. And that includes taping monitors into cases. So it'll work fantastic, so don't worry about that. So the 8.8-inch screen has a USB-A connection and an HDMI. So those actually have to go towards the back of the case. So we're actually going to want to route those to the left. You would think that we'd maybe want them to go towards the right, but we're actually going to route them to the left. And there's this little crevice right here between the motherboard and the rear fans that both of the cables are going to be able to fit through. And then they're going to go through this little pass through right here. So let's go ahead and get those installed. And we are all done, and it came out looking so unbelievably cool. I'm extremely happy with this build, and I think it complements my normal build so well. Got a black build and a white build, and you can see none of the screen is being blocked by our CPU cables, and being able to tuck those two cables for the screen between the motherboard and the fans just ended up turning out so well. And I didn't plan that at first, but that's just how it ended up working, which is absolutely amazing. And here's our HDMI for the screen. Here's our USB port for the screen as well. And then here is our fan controller plugged into a USB-A port. And then here is the final look at all of our cable management. And I know a lot of people don't care, but I do. And to me, it was worth spending the extra time to get it to look like this. And it just makes using the machine that much better knowing that it looks like this on the back. So really happy with this. And to me, it's a lot of fun. So I have no idea if this was helpful or not, but that is how I cable managed in my O11 Vision build. I appreciate the tips, PC Kratos. No worries, my dude. So now that it's all said and done and you've got this build over here, do you think I can have it? You know what? No.